As the advancing Nazis attempted to spread their European control into Great Britain during World War II, General Dwight D. Eisenhower and the Allied powers collaborated to create Operation Overlord, later known as D-Day. The plan was to ambush the beaches of Normandy, France on June 6, 1944, and regain a foothold on the European continent. The tragic losses of over 50,000 lives from the Allies' offensive of the Battle of Normandy would achieve the Allied triumph by pushing the Nazis back to the Seine River. This would divert Germany's attention away from the invading Soviet Union to the east, and would prove the beginning of the end of the Third Reich, who would never recover from this defeat. While the fighting between the Allied and Axis powers raged during World War II, the powerful German Nazis emerged as a leading military power which threatened all of Europe. At the time, the Germans were fighting a single-front war, mainly to their east against the Soviet Union, who was attempting to take back control of conquered lands. The Allies recognized a need to open a new front to surround the Nazis and minimize their fighting capabilities. Adolf Hitler, the leader of the Germans, understood that there would soon be an Allied attack on the Western Front, but was unaware of when and where this attack would take place.
Numerous attacks by the British and Canadians on areas such as the Vauxhall Islands and Dieppe were conducted to test Nazi defenses and gain battle experience for their soldiers. Some of these were very unsuccessful, and the Allies lost many men, indicating the need for an intricate operation plan with well-trained troops. British Prime Minister Winston Churchill met with President Franklin D. Roosevelt in April of 1943 in Washington, D.C. to begin their master plan to attack the Nazis from a new area in Northern Europe and open a new battlefront to the war. The beginnings of Operation Overlord were constructed, and D-Day would occur a little over a year later. Adolf Hitler knew he would need new fortifications to defend his forces against this attack, but he was still unaware of the location and time. The Nazis began to construct the Atlantic Wall, stretching along the coast from Denmark to Spain, consisting of a massive wall armed with guns, cannons, landmines on the beaches, obstacles in the water, and many other weapons to ward off their enemies. They upgraded their artillery and tank supply while recruiting soldiers for their army to place at likely landing spots for the Allies. British General Frederick Morgan theorized that the best landing regions along the coast of northern France were the Pas de Calais region and Normandy. The Pas de Calais was the easiest option to invade the area, but it was an obvious option that was fortified with Nazi troops and defenses. The Allies used this to their advantage to distract the Nazis and mislead them to believe that they would attack at this location. Their true goal was to attack along the beaches of Normandy. They used false radio messages that could be intercepted to indicate that they would attack the Pas de Calais, but try and mislead the Nazis into believing that they would attack Normandy. The United States opened a military base directly across from the Pas de Calais in Great Britain. Inflatable tanks and aircrafts were placed in fields to be viewed aerially, taunting their enemies. Unending bombs were dropped near the Pas de Calais in the months leading up to D-Day. The Allies were soon ready to launch Operation Overlord on June 5, 1944.
Just as they were about to begin the operation, terrible weather delayed the attack until June 6th, building the nerves of the soldiers about to fight on the beaches. Once the weather calmed down, General Dwight D. Eisenhower commenced the beginning of Operation Overlord. First, paratroopers were dropped from aircraft behind the Nazi forces along the beaches to cut telephone and power lines and sabotage their fight from behind. Soon after, the massive armada of Allied ships sailed to the beaches of Normandy and began to fire artillery with planes at the Atlantic Wall and Nazi defenses. This allowed their troops to leave their ships and step foot on the beaches. Many soldiers were immediately killed as Nazi machine guns and cannons bombarded them. Several beaches were taken by the Allies very easily as they rampaged the enemy forces. Omaha Beach, however, was very difficult to overtake as it consisted of cliffs and water obstacles that denied the invading troops access to the mainland. It was here that the United States experienced massive amounts of casualties and the loss of many ships, tanks, and weapons. Eventually, these soldiers were able to overwhelm the Nazis and began pushing their forces further inland. The rest of the beaches were overtaken by the Allies, who connected with the paratroopers who sabotaged the Nazi defenses. They now controlled a massive area along the coast of northern France. All of the Germans were caught completely off guard. However, Adolf Hitler still believed that the Pas de Calais would be attacked, which allowed the Allies to advance even further inland. Soon enough, he sent troops to the beaches of Normandy to fight the invading Allies. The following battle would take place in areas surrounded by trees that helped the Nazis fight. Allied airplanes and tanks were used to decimate enemy troops through the bombings of fortresses, bridges, roads, and anything that would be strategic advantage for them. All of the Allied forces that originally invaded the beaches of Normandy were able to link after about 4 days of fighting. British troops then attempted to take the Nazi base, Caen, before being obliterated by Nazi defenses, which had stronger and more reliable tanks. American troops soon attacked the port of Cherbourg with close combat to take control of the city within a week. This allowed the Allies to regroup and use airplanes to bomb Caen and gain control over it.
The Allies could finally focus on advancing through German lines with Operation Cobra by using airplanes and tanks to bomb them and advance into open country. Their journey against the Germans through Europe would continue, as their enemies would never fully recover. Eventually, the Nazi forces were completely obliterated, and the Germans surrendered on May 7, 1945, under a year after the initial invasion of Normandy. The Battle of Normandy was over by the end of June 1944 and brought about the deaths of over 50,000 soldiers who fought for their nations. These tragedies could never be overcome no matter the triumph. However, they were justified by the domino effect of their actions. The successful invasion of Normandy led to an unstoppable advancement and later victory for the Allies, which eventually brought an end to the war. This ended the socialist threat toward a countless number of lives and protected their freedoms up to current day. The world that humans now live in was created by World War II and the heroic actions of many brave soldiers on D-Day in Operation Overlord.